In this lesson, we'll continue creating objects that don't necessarily fit onto any of our three perspective planes. Alright, so in the previous lesson we continued or began creating these angled planes that really don't fit onto any of our three perspective planes. And we're going to continue doing that, creating those type of planes as we work our way towards the front of this building here. So in looking here at our orthographic drawings, we're kind of on this piece right here. So let's go ahead and select that, hold down Alt and make a copy of that, bring it on over. And let's go ahead and think about bringing that into perspective. Now, before I do, I'm going to go ahead and hide several of these objects. So we're just working with this plane that's furthest back because we're actually hiding that plane in several places. So, this brings up a good point. It's probably a good idea if you're doing a fairly complex perspective drawing to go ahead and organize your different areas in your drawing into logical groupings that you can put on different layers. That way you can turn on a layer and turn it off as you need it. So for this particular instance, I'm going to go ahead and just drag a marquee selection around all that. Hold Shift to deselect this plane at the very back, and then we'll hit Control 3 to hide those. So we're just dealing with this one plane here. Alright, great. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my perspective selection tool, and I'm going to go ahead and choose my right plane grid. And let's go ahead and zoom in really nice and tight here. Now, you'll remember when we were creating this plane, we actually backed it up just a little bit here, so that basically our protrusions will not only protrude forward, but protrude up a little bit. So we're actually going to need to use our automatic plane positioning to reposition our right plane here. So I want to hold over that anchor point there and hold Shift. And we're going to position that plane even with that point right there. So now we can zoom back out, and we can go ahead and bring this into perspective here and snap it in right on that plane. Now, I'm going to get pretty close, but you can see it's not going to snap to the object. It's actually snapping to the grid lines. So I'm going to get it pretty close, and I'm going to show you how to make that line up perfectly here. So let's go ahead and zoom in on that here. All right. Now, if you remember in the last lesson, we did several little bits of finagling here to basically use our transform panel here to make these two objects line up. But the problem we've got here is that these two objects sit on different perspective planes. This one right here sits on our left plane. So what we're going to actually need to do is let's go ahead and deselect our current object just by clicking away, and let's go ahead and click this object right here. Let's go ahead and, for just the time being, we're going to move this over to the right perspective plane, but we're going to maintain its current perspective. So let's go ahead and right click on that object, choose perspective, and hit release from release with perspective here. So choosing that, we're going to come over, select our right perspective plane, and we'll right click again and attach it to the active plane. Alright, so if I zoom out here, you can see what Illustrator's done. You can see it's redrawn the bounding box to constrain to the right perspective grid. So it's seeing that as part of our right grid now, which is what we want, because we want to be able to get an accurate read on the x and y coordinates of that anchor point, of this anchor point right here at the corner. Alright, so let me go ahead and just click away, make sure I don't have anything selected, and I want to again use my automatic plane positioning and match this right plane up here with our original object. Let me go ahead and mouse over that anchor point there and hold Shift. And now let's go ahead and get some readings on our x coordinate here. So we know that it's set to a 0 y coordinate because it's not raised up any. It's sitting right on the baseline of this perspective grid. So our x coordinate here is minus 12.26, and our x coordinate here is minus 14.66. So we need to enter the x coordinate value on this object in for this object right here. So we'll just go ahead and select this object, come up here and enter an x coordinate for this lower left corner of minus 12.66. And we have effectively moved that object, and it's sitting right there on the corner of this current object. Actually, in looking at that, it looks like there is a little gap there. Maybe I got my number wrong. So tell you what, let's undo that. Go ahead and realign that using the automatic plane positioning, and yeah, it was minus 12.26. So let's go ahead and move that back again, minus 12.26. And there we go. It's in exactly the right position now. So now we're ready to come up here and begin working with this this path segment up here. But before we do that, let's go ahead and make sure we switch this perspective on this particular shape back to where we had it. So we're going to release that from perspective again. Select our left grid plane and reattach it. Now we've got that shape back where it originally started. So we're ready to go ahead and continue. So I'm going to come in and grab my direct selection tool here. Let's come in and grab this path right here. And actually, it looks like we've got several anchor points here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on these anchor points, holding Shift. These are actually extra anchor points we probably don't even need. So we'll go ahead and just select all those anchor points along this path, with the exception of the corner ones. And we'll delete those to delete all the path segments there. And let's come back and delete this path segment on the left side as well. So what we're left with here is just the top and the bottom of that shape. And we'll go ahead and bring those to the front. Alright, so at this point we're ready to go ahead and move this particular path segment back in a perpendicular fashion. So I'll tell you what, let's grab our perspective selection tool here, and let's make sure we grab just this path segment right here. And we're going to use that keyboard shortcut of 5 to move this one backwards. And we're going to get it pretty close. We can line it up here with our transform panel here in just a moment. We'll just zoom in nice and tight on this. Alright. Now if you remember from the last lesson, we're actually going to need to release this anchor point, or this path segment, excuse me, from its perspective plane. So we'll do that again here. Select the left perspective grid and attach this to that perspective grid, or that active plane here. And now we can come in and take a reading on the X and Y coordinates here and match this anchor point up with this one. So taking a look at this one here, you can see that the X value is minus 191.6. So we'll come in here and input that value for that top left corner of our reference point. And we have now positioned that segment exactly up against our current plane. So at this point we can go ahead and grab our pen tool and recomplete this shape. So I'm going to click on that anchor point there. And we'll come down here and we'll look for that anchor point for this path that's down here. There we go. We'll link those together. And I tell you what, let's go ahead and select this entire shape and hit Control J to complete that path, to join that path. Alright, so we've created the first face here for the front side of our building. And I want you to take note here that this current face is still assigned to this left perspective grid. What that's going to allow us to do is create a copy of this for the other side of this front of our front of the building. So we could actually hold down Alt and 5. And we'll do this here in just a moment. We've still got to create the centerpiece though. And we can create a copy here perpendicular to this one when we're ready to create that next piece, just like so. So I'm actually going to undo that for right now. And that's because we still have to address this center part of the front of our building. Now, you can't really see this from the orthographic drawing here that I have here because it's actually hidden from this view, and from this front view, it actually just looks flush. But what I'd like to do is recess this center piece of glass right here, this darker gray piece, just a little bit down in between this piece right here and this piece right here. So in the next lesson, we're going to pick up where we're leaving off here, and we're going to go about doing just that.